Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast, it's Critical Blast.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
And I'm Scott Wakefield, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we talk about comic books and all kinds of great storytelling, sometimes with incredible guests. And we want you to join us Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Silverline Sunday, hosted by Curtis Fujita!
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim. This is Silverline Sunday. So we have most of the usual suspects here. Tim's joining us from Wednesday Wham. Our fearless leader, Roland Mann. It's his birthday. We did sing birthday to one of our members last time. Didn't go so well. So I think we'll just all go ahead and wish Roland a very, very happy birthday. And
I made the mistake of coming on that day, so
I
set myself up for that one.
It was his birthday. So before we get started, just give you a little heads up about what this program's going to be tonight, and then we'll have everybody introduce themselves. We'll go ahead and just let you know that tonight we're going to follow up, just like our Wednesday Wham counterparts. We're going to talk about our inspirations, what inspires us from comic books, what inspires us for creating comic books, for living our life from what we learned from comic books, just anything and everything under that inspiration banner. Okay, I am Curtis Fujita. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tim TK.
I am Wolfette.
Hi, everyone. I'm Roberta Conroy.
Peter, would you please be so kind?
Hey, everybody. I'm just the penciler on the upcoming Champion of Miss Fury.
Aaron Humphreys. Aaron, please, go ahead.
I am the penciler on the Fire Rush series.
John Martin. John, please, go ahead.
Hey, I am the inker on Fire Rush.
The man in the mask himself, Mike Belcher. Mike, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I am a production designer at Silverline. I letter Divinity and Twilight Grim. And I also, as Curtis just said, I create my own comic, Man in the Mask.
All right, can you see the cover yet?
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. So we're gonna start with the art of Roberta coloring. Roberta, you want to share with everybody what you're working on and how it's progressing so far?
Yeah, I just got this Champ cover, and it's looking really interesting. I have just started laying in the flats, so I'm not completely done with it, but I'm working it all out, and I'll get started coloring on it.
Yeah, while we're talking, those pencils are by Peter. And those pencils are by Peter.
This is by Stephen Butler.
Those aren't yours, Peter? Oh, so Stephen Butler. Oh, sorry.
No.
Yeah, these aren't there like a few different covers they're doing for?
There's several, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it looks like it says Butler, so it must be a Stephen Butler pencil. Great.
That's what I thought. But, Roland didn't tell me exactly. He said, look at this. Color it.
There you go.
So,
I know, that's a sexy cover, though.
Yeah,
I love it, though. It looks so dramatic.
That's got to be Butler.
Yeah.
Looks like it.
Well, Roberta's going to be working on that while we get started on things. Before we get to the subject of the evening, I just want to give an update on our current Kickstarter that just is going forward now. It's progressing. So the Trumps and Cat and Mouse Kickstarter, Roland has let us know that it's at the printer now, which is our good friends at Kablam with Tommy Florimonte and Barry Gregory, and he's saying that hopefully he'll get a copy in his hands, and potentially by the end of this coming week, it should start going into fulfillment. So look forward to that, and we want to thank all of you as always. You know, we couldn't do it without you folks, our fans, our readers, everybody. We make comics because of you guys, so we appreciate the support. And as long as you support us, we'll do our best to continue making great comic books. Yeah. So, can I get a witness? Anybody?
Whoop, whoop.
All right. We got Wu-Tang. All right. So before we go into it, let's just talk about, you know, broadly inspiration that we draw from comic books. You know, I would say we'll kind of go over it from different points of view, but let's just start out by what book or creator got you into comic books, inspired you to get into comic books? Does anybody want to chime in first?
Mark Silvestri.
Mark Silvestri. Okay.
Yeah, I can.
Matter of fact, it wasn't even. I actually have the cover right here. Since we're like, we're gonna do show and tell. There it is.
Oh that's a great Mr. Sinister. That's Inferno, right? Or was that Inferno?
Yep.
Yeah, that was one of his Inferno covers. Yeah.
It wasn't, you know, like usually you get the good, awesome covers, right? So I'll even pull it out. But it wasn't just that. I mean, the minute you open it up, like,
wow.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
That's cool.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that was. I actually really like Mark Silvestri, but I like old Mark Silvestri. I don't mind his new stuff, but for some odd reason he was much looser. There's something about his old stuff that was just fantastic. So
yeah, it was. I think because now Mark Silvestri is just Mark Silvestri. You don't see any of his influences anymore. But all this old X-Men stuff that I got and that was inspired. You see John Buscema and you see Frank Frazetta still in it, and you see Bernie Wrightson still in it, and it was still like very raw. It's like it's the bubbling pot of all of his influences still.
Yeah, he's good. You know, it's funny. Inspiration. I think it was probably went from Saturday morning cartoons to X-Men was my first comic, but what really kind of got me into him was the Marvel Universe Handbook. You guys remember those?
Oh yeah,
I bought one of them at like Safeway and started looking through, and then from there I'm like, well, I want to start drawing this stuff. But then I started drawing because I just thought the characters looked cool, and then I found out like they're actually part of stories you can read. I'm like, bonus. So I was like, went start reading them.
Yeah, Mark Silvestri is just phenomenal. I mean, he's one of those guys that when you look at his stuff, that's an illustrator, you know, like a full-blown illustrator, you know. And him and Chris Claremont, what a team. I mean, they had a great run on X-Men.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, that's by far, to me, it's still the best run. And, you know, I know people like the Claremont Lee stuff. But,
I used to be into that. You know, it's funny, over the years I used to be into the Jim Lee stuff, but the more I go back and read it, because I haven't read the X-Men a few times, I think it's the Silvestri stuff that I like, that inspired me the most. Like, well, but it edges it going. I think it's as you kind of grow up as an artist, like I like the refinement of Jim Lee when I was a kid, but as I grew up, I like that looseness and gesture that Mark Silvestri has in his stuff that bring that sort of energy. So yeah.
Well, and shout out to Chris Claremont, because you think about it. I mean, here we go talking Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, then you go back John Romita Jr., Paul Smith, John Byrne, you know, all these guys. But the common thread through that excellent leg of it, yeah, and all that, Chris Claremont. I mean, what a phenomenal writer.
Yeah, Rick Leonardi, I really like. It's hard to find his stuff, but man, when you can, he's fantastic.
His stuff is mind blowing in black and white.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, he did that Genosha run on the X-Men that was just awesome. He did, and so. But again, I actually found out a while ago he did a Alien versus Predator comic. I'm like, this looks familiar. And it's like Rick Leonardi. I'm like, no way, because he just vanishes and he'll pop up at random places. So I was happy about that.
Totally. So for Wubba, it's Silvestri. What about everybody else? Anybody else have any particular runs, creators, anything? What got you? What's the first thing that kind of captivated you?
I can actually go with a story on this.
Okay.
Back when I was a wee lad, way back in way back in the 90s, early 90s. Back when there was rock stars at Marvel and comic book signings happening all over the place in shops. Family friends got to convince my mother to bring me out to a comic shop called Comics and Collectibles here in Memphis on Poplar Avenue. My mother, of course, tells me to bring my drawing stuff with me. I'm, probably 10, 11 years old, something like that, 12, somewhere right around in that. Of course, I'm like a kid. I'm like, fine, okay, sure. I'm barely into comics at this point. Just kind of, barely into it. We get there, and it's Mark Silvestri.
Wow.
It's Mark Silvestri there, and I end up, actually getting to talk to him for a little bit. He looks over my really crappy artwork, looks at everybody else and says, we better watch out, doing that kind of stuff,
Cool.
And, talk a little bit more with me. And it was just, there was that connection there.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was, he was probably more just being really nice to a kid.
Yeah.
But, and then he's, of course, it was Wolverine number 50, with the die cut, big yellow die cut cover.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That I ended up getting signed by him. So, and that right there was basically that day when I walked out of there, I was like, I want to do this.
that is so cool because
cool.
Sometimes creators, like anybody, they have a rough day and somebody comes up to them, but just that little gesture, right, kind of sets you on this trajectory, and that's just so important. Not everybody, very few people, I think, in any creative endeavor start out great, but when you have just one of those great creators just kind of nudging in that direction, that's great, excellent.
Yeah.
And I do want to sit here and say, while we've talked all this great stuff about Claremont, we can't not give the same to Larry Hama.
Oh my gosh! Please don't get me started. He's one of my favorites. Yeah.
He is an awesome dude just to meet.
Wow.
And I will say that I am very happy to say that Wolverine number 50, even it got stolen, and I was able to get it back, and I was able to get it signed by Silvestri, but now it's also signed by Larry Hama. So, I have both of those on that book.
Strange enough, the comics that really inspired me, the original Ninja Turtles, and then the Alien versus Predator, the original Alien versus Predator series by Dark Horse was a huge inspiration. I don't know, I just like that story.
No, definitely. Mike, we haven't heard from you. What got you into comics? What inspired you into the whole world?
It had to be John Byrne's Fantastic Four and Alpha Flight. It was the doubleheader. They had me and didn't let me go, and then Superman pretty much said, "Yeah, I want to do this. Why not?" I just, it was just something that just kind of hit me, and then after that, it was, that was the guy that I went to as far as learning certain things and certain presentations, and I think if you see a smile on one of my characters, you could probably see a little Byrne smile. You probably don't see too much more of Byrne, but that's probably the biggest thing that got me. It hooked me. I mean, I just knew, it's like I looked at it and I thought, hey, this guy gets paid to do this.
Yeah.
I want to do this too. And then that just absolutely, it just opened the whole world to me. And then it kind of snowballed from there. But yeah, that's the thing that got me. Yeah, the Byrne stuff.
That's excellent. You can tell Mike's really good at paying homage to different creators, different things. If you look at, we were talking about his Man in the Mask Halloween specials. There's a scene where all these kids are in their trick-or-treat outfits, and it's basically like Mike saying what his favorite comic books. I mean, you see the Spirit, I think you see Mage, you see just about everything in the background. So you guys, if you haven't, you should really check that out. But you can tell.
Yeah, you got fun with something like that. I mean, it's a cornucopia of every influence I ever had, and it's fun. And
Yeah.
and the great thing about it is some of those characters I've gotten to know some of those guys who do that. So it's even funner to do that and kind of put those little Easter eggs in there. But yeah.
Definitely. That's great. Well, Tim, I know you probably answered this on Wednesday Wham, but not everybody watches both shows, so maybe you could share with our audience on Sundays what got you into this, what inspired you. What's your story over there?
So I talked about this a little bit, but my active inspirations are always current or modern writers because I'm always inspired by what I'm reading currently. But what got me interested in the first place was actually the Claremont and Jim Lee run of X-Men. I've liked Jim Lee stuff. I was a big fan of Inhumans. But it wasn't until early mid 2000s with Ed Brubaker that I realized that someone was getting paid to do this.
I think that was me when people what, you can have a job doing this,
right? Someone got paid to make the fever dream that is Necrosha. I want to do that.
Yeah, I know.
That's cool. What about you, Pete?
I was thinking about this.
What's your inspiration? Excuse me. Go ahead.
The cartoons dragged me into comics. So the X-Men and Spider-Man in 90, whatever it was, 96, whatever, got me into the comic store. And the first comic I ever picked out, my dad would buy me. It's just I saw an Incredible Hulk on the stand, whatever you want to call it. And I said, "Oh, that looks really cool. Can I have that?" And that was Adam Kubert. It was just an issue of the Hulk, and he was fighting Wolverine in the Savage Land. And the art in that, even today, I look at that and think, Jesus Christ, this is good. And I thought, I want to draw.
So good.
Yeah, I want to draw like this. And when he comes to drawing Wolverine, I think that he nails it. But I thought, I want to draw like that. And then at the same time, Marvel were doing the Heroes Reborn stuff.
Oh yeah.
So it was Rob Liefeld on Captain America and Jim Lee and I was
Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four. And
that was Jim Lee.
Yeah.
And they're the first books I bought. And I'll say what you want about Rob Liefeld and whatever, but as a kid looking at those Captain America, I was like, this is incredible. This is what comics are. This is brilliant. I just wanted to draw that superhero over the top action stuff, and I've been drawing ever since my parents bought me the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way for Christmas, and away I went. Yeah, and I've still got that book. And that's the one thing. The only thing I've got left from a kid is that How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
It's funny. So many people talk about. I don't think I ever bought that or looked at. But I do remember there was a How to Draw DC Comics. It looked like it was made almost like a coloring book. It was very cheaply made, but it was How to Draw Superman or whatever. I remember that. I never got into drawing the Marvel the Comics way. From there, I started getting figure art books or whatever. But now I kind of feel like I missed out. I'm like, well, I didn't get to do the How to Draw Comics the Marvel way. Man,
I think you can find them at Five Below now.
Oh yeah, you can go back and find them now.
Well, Pete brought up a good point. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, I'll just say we picked up that book, and it's is it John Buscema, isn't it? He's done the artwork for that book, and I sort of just skipped over the basic lessons of drawing spheres and circles. So how he's drawn that Submariner. I'm like, my God, that's amazing! I want to draw that. So I just tried copying his pictures, basically. And I think that's what you do as a kid. You just try and copy. Yeah. You just copy and then go from there. But yeah, the art in that book, he's phenomenal, and that leads you on to other stuff. You try and track him down when you're older, and you get the John Buscema Spidey and whatever.
Definitely, you were mentioning, your parents bought it for you, and that's something that, I as far as inspiration, I'd be curious what everybody's take on this. But when you're younger, or whenever, even when you're older, you decide to pursue a creative endeavor, or even more so, pursue a creative endeavor as a professional endeavor, right? Yeah. There's going to be naysayers and stuff like that. I find that a fair amount of people, and myself included, that pursue this kind of creative stuff as a profession, we were very fortunate that our parents, our loved ones, nowadays my wife, and so forth and so on, support us. I draw a lot of inspiration for that. I mean, I'd be curious. I mean, don't know your dirty laundry if you have some dysfunctional family thing going on, but I'd be curious to hear, for all of you, okay, my dad or my mom would take me to the conventions, or they said, yeah, you can, just because that's not always the case. Some people say, what, you're crazy, go be a doctor, a lawyer.
Yeah.
Does anybody have that kind of experience from family?
No, I was lucky. I think my dad's into that sci-fi stuff, and Doctor Who and if it was on TV, he'd say, "Well, you got to watch this." And comics, he was like, he bought comics when he was a kid, so I found a comic store, like it was literally down the road from us. I never knew comic stores existed. He's like, "We'll go in and have a look," and I'm still buying my comics from that same store that I went to as a kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I was fortunate. And my
It's
mum's
like going
an
to the
artist,
cathedral.
so yeah.
It's like going to the cathedral. When you walk in, you smell that kind of sour newsprint kind of smell.
Yep.
You get to that feeling, you kind of get that little heart kind of pumps a little bit faster, and
I still do that. I
kind
open,
of
I open an old comic book and I take a good sniff of those pages. Yeah.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Anybody else? How was your family or your parents? Were they like, okay, this is a great idea? I mean, Pete sounds like he comes from that, so
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I was taken to the comic store every once in a while, but no, that definitely was not. There wasn't the support there for it. Like I said, it wasn't my mother who. It's like, hey, I'm going to take you here. It was a family friend who had to convince. I wish I could say otherwise. Don't get me wrong, but it's. I didn't even go to my first convention until like 7 years ago.
Oh yeah, nor did I. But in the UK, we didn't really have them, so it was like, oh
yeah. Well, they have been
wow.
the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention here in Memphis has been going.
Is John still there? Or was it just me?
I think you're chopping up a little bit, John.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
While you look into that, Roberta, we haven't heard from you yet. Roberta, what about you? What inspired you to kind of get into comic books?
Well, I guess I had a lot of family influence and friend influence, I'd say. When I was younger, I used to just be completely absorbed with horror movies, and I liked drawing the classic horror monsters. Like I just draw them, like Creature from the Black Lagoon and Frankenstein's everywhere, and I had this weird little dragon I used to draw, just doodling or whatever. And somehow my younger brother decided to get into D&D, and all of those covers of Dragon magazine was like amazing to me.
Oh yeah.
And some of it was really good art, and some of it was really cheesy,
But the cheesy ones had a kind of charm to it, right? Like some of our old colleagues, Chris Young and those guys from the Malibu days, they recently, 3 of them did artwork that looks like those really cheesy black and white images in the old D&D manuals, specifically done in that style.
Yeah.
Because it had such a charm to it, right?
It did, and also I have to say I was heavily influenced by my dad. He had a sci-fi collection up on a bookshelf that whenever I felt like it, I was going and looking at that. And so it's like science fiction magazine covers were really interesting. The artwork is just dramatic. The colors are bold, and I just really took to that style of kind of fantasy art. Yeah. And that brought me into it for the most part. And I didn't get as heavily into buying comic books as much as I did a few here and there. I liked Wonder Woman and a few, but I really got into it with Neil Gaiman stories, and I just think I took to it about college age. That was what really kicked it off. I think it's more because I had more free time that, I felt like inspiring myself with. And when I was younger, I think I just had way too many other activities. Like everything was an activity. And so just that's how it worked out. I got more creatively driven when I was in college.
That's great. That's great. Well, for me, I mean, it started with X-Men, like probably around Paul Smith's time, and then I just kept going through to John Romita Jr., and then we're talking about everybody else, Silvestri, and Jim Lee, and so forth and so on. I really got exposed to manga and stuff like that. I remember I was showing one of my friends an X-Men comic book, my friend from Japan, And I'm showing, Wolverine's the most, badass out there. Nobody can beat Wolverine. He goes, I'm going to show you some guys that can beat Wolverine. I said, no, there's nobody can beat Wolverine. And he pulls out this thick black and white comic book from Japan, and it was an early edition of Fist of the North Star. And he goes,
oh, that's great.
This guy's name is Kenshiro, and he can hit people with his finger, and then their brains explode. And it was just like ultra violent. So I kind of got exposed to both those. And then one of my other big inspirations, I brought this beverage for everybody to see. I found it today at the Asian market. Is Dragon Ball. This is my Vegeta citrus cider flavor soda. All right, and Dragon Ball, one of my favorites. Also, just I loved it so much, and when I fell in love with it, it was before it came stateside. So I had to find weird ways to watch Dragon Ball animated and get it. I had to get French versions because I had a friend from.
That's one other thing that really inspired me was Robotech cartoon.
Yes, I'm a huge Robotech
Oh my
fan
god, I was
myself.
drawing those characters all the time.
Yeah.
No, totally. I mean, the that kind of graphic look that Japanese anime has,
Yeah.
it's so influential, But I used to have a friend from Lyon, France, and he would send me Dragon Ball, but it was in French, and I was taking French classes in school, and so that's how I watched Dragon Ball. And you haven't really seen Dragon Ball until you hear them talking like really guttural French. It's an experience. I highly recommend it. So
I can think Vegeta would be very interested in French. I mean, that guy's constantly. It's funny. We got into Dragon Ball Z too, me and my friends, and we figured it out. I mean, we liked it, but after a while, this is like the WWE of cartoons. Like, because everyone's like always screaming and fighting, and it was fun, but it was definitely like more like a WWE sort of everyone's got grudges and they'll fight and stuff. But yeah, I watched it when it came, I think, on Toonami is when I started getting into it and I started watching it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like that idea of escalating action, right? How do you outdo this? How do you do that? They somehow manage to keep doing it forever.
Yeah.
So, no, definitely. So we kind of talked about what kind of gave us that initial bug, kind of bit us to kind of start reading it or consuming the media. Was there like a watershed moment for you folks where you go, okay, I'm inspired now to move from the consumer to the creator, because everybody's creating now. So what's that? Does anybody have anything to add about that experience?
For me, that was discovering Frank Frazetta.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, the first time I ever saw Frank's work was in a magazine. It was actually for a Rumpelmans ad. It was just the painting of the Silver Warrior. And like I turned it and I'm like, it just blew my mind. I'm like, okay, so I have Silvestri and now I just saw Franzetta. And I was like, I want to do this. Like this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And right after, it wasn't even really closely after that, one of my friends handed me a Dark Sun book that was illustrated by Brahm.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was it. And then I discovered Beasley.
Oh, sure.
And yeah, that's it. That's the end of it right there. But Beasley was like the permanent linchpin.
I think, strangely enough, one of the comics that got me creating was a comic called Boris the Bear. Anybody ever heard or remember this?
I remember that. Yeah, the indie book.
It was an indie book by Dark Horse, yeah. And it was about him, like the little bear. I think the first issues he went on and killed all the like Ninja Turtles and Usagi Yojimbo. And it was like this huge spoof. And I remember I was like, I saw this t-shirt with this like rat character at a beach. I can't remember if I bought it, but I liked to design this little rat character. I decided to make my little like rat superhero, and I was like in 6th grade. And of course I was just, as a kid, it's like, what is, is there a story? It's like, no, he's just blowing everyone up because that's what's cool in Boris the Bear. So that's, and then of course, he just kept deciding. And almost all of my stuff was derivative, different Ninja Turtle stuff. I was really into Ninja Turtle, Usagi Yojimbo, all the anthropomorphic. It wasn't until much later that I decided to actually try to write stories instead of just drawing out power fantasies of my little characters doing whatever.
Some people don't go out of that phase. Just
no, they don't. And they make a good living at it.
Yeah.
What about you, Tim? What was that moment? You okay? Time to start creating.
Probably when I was in high school theater. I was one of the guys who lettered in theater instead of sports in high school. So we ended up having a competition moment where if you're in the advanced theater class, everyone wrote a script for a full stage play, and whoever essentially got nominated by the class, they got produced by the school. I didn't win, but I was actually I really enjoyed it. So then I said, well, okay, what if I pursue this? Went into school from that point, seeking out to actually write novels and literature, and published some literature and short stories and whatever, and then ended up discovering when I was going to school, went to school that Roland teaches at, and then there's a class on writing comics, and that was the moment where I just kind of connected the dots. I'm like, oh crap, I can actually, make this a thing, having already been published in some regards. So that was kind of the moment that solidified that I wanted to write more comic focused than, man staring out window, teapot boils has revelation, end of short story.
Great, that's great. Well, Roland's such a, I knew him as most from back at Malibu when I was in high school and I was his assistant. But he has that great kind of teaching spirit. He doesn't pull punches in terms of what he expects in quality, But I think everybody here that's ever been in touch with him knows that he'll be the first person to vouch for you to go and do something. He doesn't do it haphazardly. He has the standards, but he definitely has that teaching spirit. So that's excellent.
Yeah.
Anybody else? What was that moment where you said, okay, time to pick up the pencil myself and start moving on this thing?
I don't know. I think the moment I picked up a comic book, I was like, I want to do this, but I don't know at what point it became a serious. This is what I actually know. I do know that. I finished university the first time. I had to go to university. I was told I had to go. I had to go and do something. So I just went off and did something. The whole time I was like, I'm drawing, I'm doing my own thing, and so I'm just gonna finish this, and then I'll go and I'll make it. I'll become an artist somewhere. Of course, life doesn't. It's not that easy. As 10 years later, I'm still doing it. But then I was like, right, well, I finished out. I've got to get a job to pay some bills, so I'll draw and work. You can't do that. You can't have a full-time job and draw comics.
Yeah,
it's not
hard,
possible.
yes.
Yeah.
Hard.
It was finally when I got made redundant about 6 years ago. I just found myself drawing. I was like, right, I finally got time to draw now, like properly. I just did that every day, and I decided, no, why would I want to go back and do something I really hate doing when I just want to draw comic books? So that's why I decided. I said, right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go off to school and learn properly. Make sure I don't think I was a terrible artist compared to what I am now. I was awful, but I knew the basics, and I thought, well, I better go and brush up on these skills. And you learn quite a lot quite quickly at the Cubic School. And that was that. There's no turning back. Once you spend that much money on education, you can't then just, I'm not going to do that. You got to follow through. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah, but I think the moment I picked up a comic book and read comics, started drawing and copying those pictures, that's what I wanted to do. That's why I wanted to draw those superheroes and draw those anything really. Just draw anything and get paid to do it. You pay me to draw something, then that's super. I don't care what it is, so long as it's not Transformers, I'm on board.
Don't talk to Sid. Don't talk to Sid about that.
Sid loves Transformers. I know he does. I had when I was at school, we had the portfolio reviews, and the guy, one of the editors, asked me, "So what do you want to draw?" And just basically, I said, anything except Transformers. If you want Transformers, go and speak to Sid. Not me.
So Pete, I gotta ask though. That's interesting because with the Cubic School, I went to art college, but a lot of times in most art colleges, it's a very broad thing. You're in the illustration department or the animation. So, and within that, you'll find somebody that, okay, this guy wants to do comic books, or this person wants to do this specific. But when you go to the Cubic School, you were going like like it's like threading
Yeah,
a needle. I mean, you're
it's-
going right to a very specific thing. What is this? What is the environment like there where everybody wants the exact same thing?
Well, interestingly, not everyone does. Right,
They
this is what I
don't.
found. This is what I found in literally the first week of the first year. Teacher comes in and say, right, hands up, who wants to be a comic book artist? So I'm thinking everyone in the class is going to stick their hand up, but maybe 5 or 6 of us stuck our hand up out of a class of, I think there might be 10 or 12 of us. I'm like, and he even said, well, what are the rest of you doing here?
Yeah.
Some people want to, they just want to learn some, they may have decided they're not going to do all 3 years. They just want to learn some basic skills. And some people want to be tattoo artists and they want to learn those skills to do that. Some people want to be animators. And the school does have a course in animation. So that's what they want to do. But yeah, it is, you go there, and especially for me, if you've flown over, you've gone to do one thing. I've gone to learn to make comic books, and 99% of the course at the school is drawing comic books, is narrative art. I spoke before I got accepted into the school. You're never sure whether you're going to get in. So I spoke to other universities doing art, and they're like, "Well, yeah, we do a course on comic books for a semester." And I was like, "Well, I don't want to learn how to make prints and all this other abstract stuff. I want to make comic books." There's no school in the UK that does it. I don't think there is. There might be one or two somewhere. Someone might correct me, but nothing I knew of. But I knew from a kid, from all the adverts in the comic books, there was the Cubit School, and I've always wanted to go there. But it's very expensive. The schools in America are really expensive. In the grand scheme of things, the Cubit School is not compared to other US institutions. But for someone coming overseas who can't get student grants and loans and stuff, it's a lot of money. So it wasn't until I was older that I had assets and I could, liquidate those assets to pay for it. I was like, well, I'm going to go and learn to draw comic books, and that's the sole intention of going there. I'm drawing comic books. Everything's focused to doing that and making me better at doing it. That's what I want to do. Yeah.
I remember I went to a few months to the Cubert School. And when I first came out of high school, and I was more into cartooning then. And a lot of people would draw like superheroes, and I would draw these really weird cartoon creatures that I thought were cool. My teachers just didn't know what to make of it. They just kind of looked at it and were just like, yeah, okay, we're going to the next guy. I'm just like, okay. Like they just didn't know, if it's cartoon and you own the, creation, there was no anatomy. It was my own thing. They just didn't know what to critique, so he just moved on.
In my class, we had one of the other guys in my class was an animator, makes really wonderful animations, but he has that. I don't know how to describe it, like some sort of cross between Ren and Stimpy and I don't know. It's really just, and the teacher would go like, well, it's definitely your style.
Yeah, it's definitely your thing. Yeah.
So they'd say, like, we still got to work on your perspective and this and that. But in terms of anatomy, I mean, I don't know where you would start with that, because it wasn't
right
your traditional superhero anatomy. It was just his cartoony thing.
I started doing more like kind of superhero-y stuff just to give because I kind of figured out, well, I need to do that if I want to actually get the critiques that are going to help me. I mean, doing my own stuff, it's like, yeah, they don't know where to go with that. So. But yeah, I definitely have stories.
I remember we did third year we had these Batwoman pages to do, and Lee Weeks was our masterclass instructor. So Lee was going down, and we had him on the wall. He was looking at it, and he goes, "Well, it's definitely yours, Leonard."
Wow.
He did know how to make, but no, it was brilliant. His stuff was hilarious. But yeah, it wouldn't be. It's not going to draw Marvel or DC stuff, but his animations are really very cool.
Yeah,
he does a lot of animation stuff.
So before we go a little bit further, any of our artists want to? Roberta, are you okay to switch out with somebody if they're ready?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Peter, Bubba, either one of you ready?
Yeah. Okay, hang on.
I'm still completely all chicken scratch right here.
Okay.
So.
What about?
I can't share what Roberta's sharing.
Okay. Did you want to share by camera or by?
No, I'm doing digitally on the computer. So
Oh, did you? Okay.
Okay. I'm trying to press screen share, but I cannot screen share while Robella's doing it, basically. So Robella needs to stop.
Okay.
Mine down.
All right. So while they're doing that,
Here we are so far. I like
let's
it.
take a look.
It's gonna take a while to do, but
it's cool.
Yeah.
Cool,
I like
right?
that complementary color on the background to that blue. Nice pop. Good choice.
So,
really nice.
All right. Stop sharing.
Let's see if we can do this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, while they're setting things up, let's hear from. I think we may have just lost John. Oh, wait, there we go. Looking good.
Oh, cool.
Champ Miss Fury.
Yeah. Just doing the last. Remove these little things out of the way. Trying to.
That's champion in his 90s.
He's
outfit,
super
right?
get up. Yeah, he's loads of stuff in there.
Yeah, you in Manga Studio or Photoshop?
This is Clip Studio. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Clip Studio.
I miss it so much.
So I just put down these. It's good. I can figure out all the techie stuff quite quickly and do the buildings quite quickly, and then just fudge the figures until I get them to draw them properly.
That's excellent. Very cool.
I thought I could Photoshop pretty well in college, but when I got into Malibu Comics, oh my God, working on it every single day.
Yeah.
What's good is I can draw the gun once and then just copy paste it, and I've done it, and then just rotate it, and I've done it 3 times. So it's so much quicker than drawing it 3 times.
That's great.
That helps.
But yeah, let's get rid of him so I can.
Let's hear from some of our other folks here about what inspired you to kind of go into the creative aspect. Mike, what about you? Sounds like you were a fan first. So what was the impetus to switch over to creating?
Well, I think it's kind of just one of those things that happen just being a fan. I mean, you see something and you really get into it, and you find there's something about it that you want to do yourself. And after my early mid-teens, I pretty much just wanted to draw Superman or Batman or work for any of the big two. But I had to say, toward the end of high school, being in college, I wanted to make my own. I wanted to kind of go into it and self-publish and do my own thing. And kind of a transition. Your thinking kind of goes from a different point of view. Instead of trying to work within a structure, you're trying to, how do you create your own world? And that right there was an attraction to me. Something that was mine, because you see all these characters, and then you see, what these guys can do with them, and then I wanted a little bit of that myself. So that was a big push to kind of want to hit that creative, edge with that. But I try to look professionally into it, as far as maybe going to college for specifically art. And I checked out the Cooper School, and it was a little above my budget. So I tried to make college, the college I went to, I tried to take the classes that I thought would kind of benefit me, journalist classes, art classes, storytelling, theater, that kind of stuff, trying to hodgepodge something that would kind of give me maybe a good education on just doing comics, because that's pretty much, again, every year it just built. I didn't want to do anything else, and that's something that, even though I kind of had a little dormant period between, this early period and the period that Man in the Mask came from, I was always doing something. Even when I told myself that I was leaving it behind, even though I was telling myself that, suck it up and do the job that you're doing right now. This is what you're going to do the rest of your life. It never went away. It was that whole period of, me learning to do it and wanting it, and just it never went away. And that's pretty much where I find myself now, because, the one benefit of doing it later is that, I've got a business of my own that, isn't comics, but it does allow me time to do comics. And, whereas, if I was working a job for somebody else, it's impossible. I mean, I was working a newspaper job, and I was working 12 hours a day in the production. apartment, and it was impossible to come home and do comics, and have any kind of inspiration. And luckily, about 10 years ago, I started my own design firm, and I finally kind of put a flag in the ground and said I was going to do this. And yeah, like I said, I attribute all. If it wasn't for the early stuff, my high school drive and whatever, it's amazing how much it stuck with me. And it's sweeter now. I mean, granted, I've got the older person ails of hand drawing. I have arthritis. But that right now, that's the only thing that is detrimental to waiting lighter, because now I find that conventions are more plentiful. I find that there's a lot more opportunity as far as doing your own stuff and not being kind of frowned upon. So as far as it's just the leap from fan to everything, it's just I think comics have, and I think most comic people know that it just catches you. It's a bug. You can't describe it to anybody else who's not a comic person. It's a bug. I mean, it literally just gets in your system and it doesn't let you go, because there's no money in comics. I mean, let's be honest with you. I mean, you have to make your own money when you do it, but it just latches onto you and will not let you go. But it's the happiest thing you can do.
That's the payment, right? The payment is the work.
Yeah, I find myself just absolutely overjoyed to just be able to put something down on a page and have fun with it and share it. That's the problem. I mean, most people say, well, all you do is give it away. It's like, I love sharing the art. I love sharing my love of what it does, what it does for me. And I would love it to pay off. Maybe one day it will. But initially, I think a lot of people take it too serious. And if I had done it in my 20s, if I had done it in my 30s, I would have taken it way too serious. And in my 40s, I have had a ball. Absolutely. There's no other way of saying it. I have absolutely had a ball doing it.
That's great. I mean, and it shows in your work, when again, the Man of Mask, you can see that passion for it, and I think that you kind of said some interesting things. I think what I found very interesting is you were talking about how, they're more plentiful now. And I can't tell you how many, I'm in my 40s too, and I have friends that now go, wow, look at all these young folks, and you go to the convention and it's popular and there's all these movies. Where were they back then? And I said, look, we had to wait until we grew up and became the executives of film companies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To greenlight these things. I mean, it was it took that. So don't get all salty that it wasn't that way when you were coming up. It took that generation to kind of bring it into the forefront, and that's a good thing. It's better now than ever, so.
The thing about, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the thing about cons is, I had that trepidation of me going out there and a bunch of 20-year-olds and definitely better, more talented people. But I was really surprised by how many people there were like me that had waited all their life really to be able to do their own comic. It was amazing, guys, my generation and the comic the convention scene just made it even more so for me, because it was very welcoming, because these were, again, these are guys in their 40s. Like they made their own career. Now this is their playtime. This is their time to do the dream they didn't have a chance to do. And I was really surprised by that. I was really surprised that as far as the cons go, that, how many guys behind tables had stories just like me. And it was very welcoming.
Absolutely. Yeah. You were going to say, Aaron, you were going to add something to that?
No, yeah. It's funny. I was not adding, I wanted to comment on that one about like your family supporting inspiration. It's funny. A lot of my support came from my high school friends. I got into a bunch of the art class, and I got a bunch of friends that we all like to sit around and draw comic books. So most of my support came from a bunch of friends sitting around drawing together. Drawing became like our social outlet. And that was, I don't know if that's for anyone else, but yeah, I still have a friend that from high school I draw with almost every week.
Cool.
So yeah.
Yeah, when I was in high school, we had something where me and my friend, we would draw this really cheesy comic book, and I would do one page during class. I was always getting in trouble for drawing in class. People would always walk by and grab the paper and throw it away, and I keep drawing because who cares? But I would draw one page of the comic book, and then we both sat at the same desk in different periods, and I would slide it into the desk, and then he would come in and he would do the next page. And then the next day I would come in, I could read what happened, and we just kept doing this for like months, So it was kind of that fun kind of, and the funny thing is that same feeling is what you get making comic books as a professional, more or less,
Yeah.
Is you hand this part off to, and I think the thing that, Mike was talking about, the bug of it, and what I think is so great about the art form is there's very few other storytelling art forms that are multidimensional in comics that you can do completely on your own with varying degrees of success. I'm not saying you can do it well, but you can definitely do it on your own. Anybody can get a piece of paper, fold it in half, draw and write a story to varying degrees of success, and put it out there. Any other thing that encompasses visual and written media, you're going to need, or other parts, you're going to need other people to help you out with. And I think that's one of the great strengths of comic books.
Well, that and the fact that besides writing, there's literally no budget on what you can show. I mean, you do movies, other stuff.
Yeah.
Why are we going to do visual effects? I mean, comics is like, if you can imagine it and draw it, I mean, that's it. I mean, there's no budget. We need to draw like a huge space battle. Okay, we can draw that. I mean, it might take time, but yeah, it's there's something, and that's why I always like sometimes frustrates me a little when I see like independent people do like comics that look like everyone else's comic. I'm like, you could do anything you want, and to do something. I know they draw inspiration, but to do somebody that's already been seen before, I'm like, come on, do some really weird, crazy, cool stuff. I don't know. Those are usually the ones I'm hunting down.
No, totally. John, what about you? Like, you talked about when you were a kid and you had inspiration for getting into it. You met Mark Silvestri. What was it that, took you down this inking path? What was that moment that you said, okay, I'm going to start working on my inking and kind of move into the professional role on this thing?
Well, that was when I started, going through, that was after the whole, kind of going through life and completely losing myself. And I actually started trying to find myself again, because I tried to do the whole family thing and work the day job. And I didn't pick up a pencil for like 10 plus years.
Sure.
And finally, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this right here. I'm really gonna get. I wanted to do this when I was younger. Heck, I met probably one of the best artists ever. One of the big seven. And I was just like, I got to make this happen. And then, kind of as I was working through that, and I was like, wow, my stuff really does suck. Throw everything out the window, start teaching myself everything from the ground up, because I'm poor folk. I can't do the keys.
I'm poor now.
Yep. I just took on copious amounts of debt.
I even look at the the little online classes. I'm like, I'd really love to do that. But after that, I retaught myself. I watched some Jim Lee videos, and of course was like, how the heck are you able to just vomit all that stuff on paper? But eventually, hey, it was practice and going at it, and I found out that the guy who created Bishop, that's how he actually got started, was inking.
With Portacio, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I butchered his name so bad.
His cousin was my science teacher in high school, and I kept trying to get my science teacher to hook me up with Will Portacio. He's like, I don't think my cousin wants to meet you. I was, okay, fine.
Right. And I actually got to engage with him online. There was back in the early days of Facebook, and he was doing like an online Q&A on Facebook in a group. It was just, you type in your question and he types in his answer and all that stuff. And it was, I actually took up the conversation for probably like 20 minutes.
Nice.
But I got a lot of information from him. And then after meeting after meeting Dean Zachary and Mitch Faust and Jim Hall, who really started to kind of mold, I was like, yeah, this is going down.
That's great.
Yeah, I just needed the support system that I have now to really get there.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious, Roberta. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for you, I would assume it was Malibu was where you kind of got started, right? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, that was I was gearing for animation, thinking that might be kind of a direction that might work out for me, and I just didn't really know. I guess when I caught wind that Malibu was hiring, I was ecstatic because I thought, this is better than animation because it's small. Because animation at the time, they were taking people and making them tiny cogs in this big process.
Yeah.
And so like you just didn't have someone being able to fulfill their vision when they can just draw somebody's gun and that's it. So I thought, that's a way you could really feel like you've completed something. And then, I don't know, something hits you when you actually go to the comic book store and you go, oh my God, I'm there now. That's cool.
Right.
Malibu was great
Yeah.
that way. They started out giving our names and then, eventually we ended up in groups, and then Marvel didn't want our names in there, so that was that. But
Yeah.
I mean, Malibu was such an easy thing. Well, you'll hear us hark about it on and on. I mean, for me, Malibu was my high school experience. I don't think much about my high school. I think about my time at Malibu. But you got to figure everybody there. I don't think there was anybody there that was 30. I think everybody was there.
Everyone was young.
20s, from top
Yeah.
to bottom. I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
soup to nuts, and there was just this energy and this camaraderie when you have that many people, that hopefulness, that excitement, and passion for the art form. And nobody was in that position where they thought they couldn't do anything, and almost nobody there would tell anybody they didn't have it in them to do something. And it was amazing place.
So positive, and it was so instructive. I don't know, the idea of group collaboration just hadn't been a really big thing in college. I always felt like, well, your friends will help you out a little bit, and your classmates somewhat, but it really never felt like a collaboration was a thing that would help an artist. I always thought it was a very lonely life, really. And getting in Malibu was the opposite. I was like, oh my God. Someone would say, oh, look what I just did, to figure this out in Photoshop. I can do this in 2 seconds. And, that made this magic so much easier to make.
Totally. And at its peak, it was crazy because we had a video game department. We had coloring. We had an art room with people penciling and inking. We had all the editors. We had Marv Wolfman. I used to sit next to Marv Wolfman. He would come in and take one of the empty desks. And then we had a video game department too. So you could literally just run from place to place and like, hey, let me check out this video game. Let me check out that. I mean,
but I never seen so many different aspects of the craft before. And it was just fascinating.
Yeah, that would be fascinating.
No, definitely. Well, for me, I mean, inspiration was the books and stuff like that. And I always say my mom was always kind of super supportive of me. She, my parents got divorced at an early age, and sometimes I think maybe that worked in my favor creatively because my mom must have felt really guilty because she took me to every comic convention, every art showing that I wanted to. One time, Chuck Jones, the animator, was doing a show in San Diego. We drove from Los Angeles to San Diego to meet him, and so I had that kind of background. And then when we go to Malibu, I mean that was something else. And I still remember my mom told me, she said she would take me out places and she would kind of half joke. She would say, "Okay, I'll take you out of places, but when you become an artist, you got to give me 10%." Okay. So I was working at Malibu and we talked on and on about it, but I worked under Roland, and then just when I was graduating high school, I became a color designer. I was one of the guys that keyed out the colors and stuff like that for the digital teams to translate into the digital format. After college, I got into video games, and my first job was designing all the characters for this fighting game for the first PlayStation. And so I wrote a check for my mom for 10%. And I got that. And she said, but also she felt guilty, right? Oh, you're just a mom that makes the kid feel guilty. But here I'm writing this check for my mom, and she goes, "You sure?" I said, "Hey, we said 10%, so she cashed it. She got her 10%. So it worked out for everybody.
And Curtis never saw his mother again.
Yes.
She just bounced.
Exactly. all that money I made as a freelance artist.
Yeah.
Well, you can only imagine. I was like $10, something like that. But yeah. Well, so we talked about inspiring you in terms of what got you into the medium, inspiring you, what got into the career. What about like what inspires you, especially even nowadays? What things inspire you, or artists inspire you to like further your craft? Like when you look at one artist, you go, "Holy crap! This I got to do this," or one writer, "I got to write like this." What is those things that kind of push you and elevate your art form?
I think I read comics, so I look at every book. I look at an artist and see what they're doing, and if there's usually something that they're doing that I really love. So I'm always watching to see what other people are doing. But Daniel Warren Johnson at the moment is the energy in his I don't think anyone's drawing like him. So if you read Wonder Woman, Dead Earth, and Extremity, what else was he doing? I can't remember. But the energy in his stuff's amazing. I look at Ryan Stegman's stuff at the moment.
When you say energy, did you mean,
so the pictures
just the thing that you can't describe, or you like his layout?
Yeah, the pictures are almost it's almost like they're moving. There's so much. I want to say energy. That doesn't really describe it, but yeah, if you look at his stuff, it's like the speed. I think it probably is a little bit I don't know manga, but I think it probably is a bit manga influenced. But loads of speed lines, and yeah, it's really check it out. Please go check it out.
It's kind of like a fearlessness when you see a penciler that has like I think what you're kind of evoking energy. It's like you just kind of like they just slapped it down. They did it.
Yeah.
But there's a fearlessness and an unapologetic kind of vibe when they're drawing that you don't always see, almost gestural, sometimes.
Yeah, Ken Lashley's like that. He's got these big, bold lines. Yeah, it's like he's just gone, I know what I'm doing, and then it just
yeah, he just slaps it down there.
Yeah,
you watch him work, especially when you see him, like he'll throw, like when he does his con sketches and stuff, he throws down a base in like a cool gray, and just throws it all down real quick, and you're like, what is that going to turn into? And the next you know, it's Wolverine, and you're like, holy cow.
He's got the really wide Copic ones, isn't he? The really, really wide ones. Just goes bang. It's like,
and he just throws it down.
Yeah. Fearless. You worry about it. He's just he knows what he's doing. And then they all do. They know what they do, and they go at it, and it turns into what they've drawn 1,000 times. But I look at everybody, and I always look at what other people are doing. I think you have to if you want to stay progressing and stay moving forward. You have to look at what other people are doing, because it's always everyone does something a bit different. You don't want to be the same, but you want to try and pick and take apart stuff and take what people do.
Yeah, I kind of got to sit there. Ryan Stegman, like you said, it's almost like they took the leash off of Stegman over the last year and just said, go at it, because this stuff's just the detail is like gone insane in it. I can only imagine that JP Mayer has to take breaks like several times during the page, eking over those pencils.
Some of the pages I've been drawing recently, I've been looking at his just because I've got to draw a lot of night scenes. The last few pages of the book are night scenes, and he obviously does stuff because it's Venom. It's a lot of it's at night, and a lot of it's dark. And I've been just looking at how he's been drawing the buildings, like as they disappear into the background, and that's a really cool way of doing it. So I've literally just nicked that. I've just stolen that, and I thought this is how I'm going to do my buildings in the background, because they look really cool, and that's what comics is, right? They just got to look cool and tell a story. So
it's like it's him, it's Oliver Copel, because of the way he's able to do things. He's able to imply so much with so little. And then there's Joe Bennett, who did the run on Immortal Hulk that was just insanely
those lines,
gorgeous.
All the lines, and I don't know.
You can see it was the pencil work was just dripping Bernie Wrightson all over it. And then it's and then Greg Capullo is still rocking out his stuff. Like I think he's gonna be one of those that I know, is gonna die with a pencil in his hand.
Yeah,
Because he's just like, which actually my favorite story from Larry Hama is his story about the critique he gave to Capullo.
Oh, I heard about that. I heard it's brutal. You got your story.
I heard he's like, it's right before he gives me my critique on my inks. He tells me this story. And he goes, I did a critique on Greg Capullo. It was pretty bad, right? I go, I haven't heard this story. He goes, yeah, he didn't talk to me for like years. I was like, that's a pretty harsh critique.
Yeah.
He's like, even after he made it, he wouldn't talk to me. And then finally, within the last so many years, he finally was like, I probably needed to hear all that. And I was like, what did you say?
Yeah.
but there's an interview with Greg Capullo talking about that, and it's brutal. Like, he basically chewed him out and was like, look, you have style, but you don't have substance. He was saying, like, you don't have structure, you don't have this and that. And I guess that's from what I hear Greg Capullo say. He kind of yelled back at Larry Hama, and Larry Hama finally said, you get the F out of my office. It got that bad. It was something along those lines.
Yeah, but Larry kind of looked at me and said, "Are you sure you want me to critique this now?" And I was like, "Well, I gotta get better."
Well, didn't Neil Adams do that to Frank Miller? Frank Miller came to New York, and Neil Adams.
I think Frank Miller was like kept coming to Neil Adams' studio or something, and Neil Adams just tore into him over and over again.
As he does.
Yeah, and
but there's an art to that, right? Like, I try not to argue too much, but like, sometimes I go back to my martial arts background. My master, I would work out for like 2.5 hour long class, and he wouldn't say anything to me. He wouldn't teach me anything. He would just walk over to me and go, "You look real lousy today," and then he'd walk away. And I would say in my mind, I go, "Okay, damn it, old man, I'm gonna shove this thing down your throat. I'm gonna work 4 hours tonight. I'm gonna work twice as hard." And he would get angry at me more than anybody else. And my classmates would say, "He has plans for you." And I said, "Whatever." And then, I become an instructor, right? But it's what you do about that, right? Do you turn it to fuel, or do you take out on that critique, right?
Because when some of my, friends or when I've asked them to give art critiques, I always feel like, well, should I just be blunt? Or should I tell them, because there's always good stuff, but there's always some stuff where I'm like, and I always just feel like, well, what am I qualified to say anything? But there's some people, like I know that I've seen starting out, and I'm like, my stuff's great, and I'm like, okay. It's not industry standard. It's hard to because you don't want to like destroy their desire to want to do this.
No, sure.
But at the same time, you got to make sure they're hard enough to handle the industry.
Right, and I'm always thinking like you, like, well, if I'm not going to say it, you're going to get a pro who's just going to destroy you. I've been destroyed by pros too, I think
have too.
The best one I got, I showed a portfolio to a guy. I think they were making the new Star Wars films at San Diego, and I waited in line and showed him my stuff. For whatever reason, I decided to do that, and he just he looked like he was irritated. After how many portfolios a guy's seeing, he's just pretty much like, whatever, kid, I want to, and but he flipped through my stuff and he said something like, "Yeah, these two are good, the rest is bad. You should put these two in the front." That was it. Go away. That was all right, we're done. And so, I had one guy, I think I told this before, I had one where he was like, I like your stuff, and I went to the very next guy and he's like, "Go back to art school." I'm like, all right. So I just I've got destroyed. And so you kind of know a little bit, like when you have your friends like, I want to get into this, like what they may step into. And I know anymore, I think it's better that they just go through what I went through instead of me trying to be like, well, no, maybe you should. Like, no, if you want to get into this, jump in with both feet. I did. You're going to get lots of good stuff, but you're definitely going to get people who are going to tell you to like, go work at McDonald's. That's just the nature of the game.
One of the things too is it's like, it depends on the criticism, right? I don't feel like necessarily always it has to be constructive, but if it's from a teacher, it has to have some constructive. Like I talked off air one time, but I had been looking forward to working in having my one comic book art class in college. Like Peter was saying, most schools only have one class towards the end, right? And I had already worked at Malibu. I had traveled to Japan to do freelance artwork for video games. And for some reason, this teacher had it out for me, and he would say, "You'll never work in comic books." And I was too humble to say I have been for X amount of years, you know?
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that's a horrible thing for a teacher to say, because if you're in the teacher's class and they're telling you you have no hope, that's partially the teacher's fault, right? I mean, if the teacher's not doing their job, you know, so it cuts both ways. But I'd be curious to hear from Tim on the writer's side of things, like in terms of like what books, artists or writers, what kind of, you know, inspires you to kind of push further or refine your craft?
Yeah. Yeah, so like I had said earlier, I take all my inspiration from what I'm currently reading, so it's a lot of more modern artists and like not necessarily classics, even though I guess at this point these people should be considered modern classics. But coming from prose and having worked in short fiction, Philip K. Dick, of course, is a huge inspiration for the style of writing I tried to have. And everyone I pull from always says something similar in what they do. In the same vein, I just started reading some stuff from Jonathan Lethem. I just read Gun with Occasional Music, and I need to read more of his stuff. But more on the comic side, Rick Remender, in particular Tokyo Ghost, and Alex DeCampi, and her work on Archie versus Predator. But what all these people have in common is they're really good at using the buy-in. There's a form of writing theory called the buy-in, where once per book or per issue, you're given one big buy-in from the audience, and then per page, you're given one smaller buy-in. If you do any more than that, you're giving them information overload, and they stop believing it. If you don't take advantage of that, you're not developing your world. And so obviously,
what the buy-in is.
So the buy-in is you present a piece of information. So if it's like on your page, you give them like a small bit, like this is just how the world is. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this is part of the world. But then on the big form in your book or in your issue for your arc, if you're doing like in the first act, you present the major premise, the major thing that makes the world weird. So you're allowed to do that once. If you do that again in the like third act, that's when people get a little like, okay, you're changing the rules on us now. That's a little wonky. But if you just immediately go into and say like, okay, the rules work this particular way, that makes no sense, but that's just how it is. Most writers will gloss over that. So you see it a lot in Philip K. Dick's books. I mean, Archie versus Predator, the buy-in is pretty obvious. Where it's like, okay, your Archie character, your here's from Archie now being chased by the Predator. That's just the world. You have to deal with that. Recommender in Tokyo Ghosts. The opening idea of, all right, now everything is run by advertisements. Advertisements run the hitman agencies. This is the world. And then you're getting small snippets along the way, the smaller buy-ins, but the big buy-in is always at the front. And
that's kind of like in character design. We say you can have one thing because it's cool. Like you can have this guy, and you can have a crazy cape on him, but that's your one. It makes no sense, but that's the one.
Right.
If you give him fangs, a cape, a machine gun mounted to his word now.
Yeah, it's a subsect of the triangle of weird. In story development, you're allowed to have one thing that's really weird. The other two need to be normal because that grounds it. To sell that weird thing, you need to take advantage of the buy-in. And so all these writers are really good at using that strong buy-in to put in something which is really outrageous at the front. And then they do really good slow burn detective writing after that buy-in has been given to you. It's not kind of, right, buy-in and then you cover it under action. Okay, here's this giant buy-in, here's this world. The rules should make no sense, but you accept it because I'm not doing anything else to you. Let's develop that further. And so I write, that book I have coming out with Silverline, Wolf Hunter, it's a canned spy book, essentially. All set in one can. But the buy-in is it's a secret history. We're changing the events of World War II just a little bit. And so I try and pull from what I understand from Philip K. Dick's writing. I also like a lot of cosmic horror. So before this, I wrote cosmic horror and short fiction, which is very much reliant on the buy-in. With, like the world to understand it is inherently wrong. It can't exist. Space God is trying to blow up your mind. And but you have to tell that over slow burn, even though you do have this initial buy-in. And so a lot of the writers I pull from are really good at using that strong buy-in to shove something which should be outrageous, but they write around it in such a way that you believe it without second guessing the book.
Cool. That's really cool. You know, you're talking about books. I'd be curious just to kind of get everybody's thoughts on what things outside of the comic book medium have influenced your work in comic books. Because, you know, like for instance, there was one of the artists that he worked at Malibu. He became one of the big directors in animation now. His name's Sam Liu. He was he did like a couple covers, and he worked for Image for a while. And nowadays he directs like a lot of the Marvel and DC animated films. But I remember asking him, what's your influences? And he said Patrick Nagel, which shocked me because, you know, Patrick Nagel, you know, very flat graphic, usually all females. He did a couple male drawings, but very 80s Duran Duran cover kind of thing. And it really surprised me. But then when I looked at his art, I could totally see what he was talking about. Does anybody have any draw inspiration for some sources that are kind of further off the beaten path from comic books?
I do all the time, as far as like, I'm a big fan of Nagel and stuff like that. And I went to school in fine arts. That my first initial degree was fine arts, and I still wanted to draw comics. And I realized, you know, it's funny. There's a lot of stuff, and fine arts is like the foundation. And I realized how much stuff you can pull from ideas in fine arts. And I think one of the things I pulled the most from my time in the fine art school is the idea of like, you can really do anything you want, because fine arts is all about the idea a lot, especially modern art, the idea. And so with comics and art, like, you know, why can't you do crazy? I mean, if you looked at my comic Godlings, I have a very eclectic character. I have, you know, my one character, Crystal, who's like this goddess of rock and stone. And so from the waist down, she is just like these solid rock legs. And it's like, well, yeah, that's just part of her body. But that's a really weird idea that no one else really does. So just instead of trying to make something that looks the same or recognizable, I try to do stuff that looks unique. And that is that stuff that kind of inspired me. And it's funny, the other thing that inspired me, the question about what keeps me going and wanting to go, that actually just has to do with me wanting to see my book on a bookshelf. That's my big thing.
Yes,
Actually, just going into a bookstore and seeing like even if it's not selling, just the fact like, you know, there's a book sitting there with my name on it, and like people can read. You know, strange enough, when I got my kids' book into Barnes and Nobles, I went down there and that was the first time I experienced walking into a store and like, there's my stuff on the bookshelf.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
and
cool.
it was worth it. I mean, I was like, and that's my addictive drive, is I just want to throw my stuff on the bookshelf to kind of basically throw my hat in the ring with everyone else and be seen.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge inspiration. I don't know if that's outside, but outside the idea of inspiration, but yeah. But
totally. I mean, there was there's a reality show you can watch on Netflix called Terrace House. It's a Japanese reality show. It's like the real world, but with decent people in it. And it's fascinating because they had a comic book artist from Italy that's trying to do manga in Japan. And there's the moment where his first manga comes out, and it's at a Japanese convenience store, and you get to see they're filming him as he picks it up off the shelf, and you can just see that excitement, that energy, you know, and such a magical moment. Looks like we got Wubba sharing right now. Wanna tell the folks at home what we're looking at, Wubba?
Yeah, it's a page from Cat and Mouse that I'm working on. I'm trying to lay out. Hasn't been going too well for me so far, but working on it.
That's part of the process, right? I think everybody knows that, you know. And for those of you watching, if you don't know, this is from the not the current Cat and Mouse series that we're working. This will be the forthcoming one.
The upcoming mini. Yep.
Yeah, which I can't say too much because I only know so much, but it goes a little bit darker, a little bit funkier. It looks pretty cool. So
yeah, we get into because Roland mentioned, so I can say that because Roland's mentioned it. It gets into the whole like voodoo thing. So that for me is just a big treat. I like drawing all that stuff. I mean it's really cool.
Totally. And I was thinking, you know, some things that are cliches and people say like, oh, in this story, the city is a character. But like with Cat and Mouse and New Orleans, like I think Roland really hit on this really cool thing of having ninjas in New Orleans. I mean, come on. How cool is that? You can't really
Yeah.
get much cooler. It's just so different, and it's just visually, it's a great set.
That was one of the things that I'm enjoying about this, because I have pulled up so many images of Bourbon Street.
Yeah, I'm doing exactly the same thing.
see
Roland really likes New Orleans.
Yeah.
You know, so, but like, like on top of the page, I mean, those buildings are literally on Bourbon Street. Like, I always include at least 3 or 4 anytime, like Roland asks for like an establishing shot or a building shot. There is always 2 to 3 buildings that's actually on Bourbon Street in my panels. I want I want people to actually connect it right away.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So maybe we'll continue on. Does anybody else have any influences from outside of the immediate comic book genre that informs their work? And
yeah, I do. I mean, for me, outside of comics and outside of, in the stuff that I guess you would lump into our stuff, for me, it's like Elephant Smolka. I'm a huge Smolka fan.
Oh, phenomenal.
I'm a huge Salvador Dali fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely adore Gustav Klimt.
Yeah.
Oh, Klimt, yeah.
I mean, those 3 outside of it. I mean, when I was first drawing, everything to me was Michelangelo and Raphael and Da Vinci and all that. And then I discovered like all these people doing fine art that are like weird. And it resonated with me because I like, I was so into Beasley and Silvestri and Liam Sharp. Like, I found out that stuff's also their influences too.
Totally.
So to me, it made sense. I'm like, you can like really weird art and bring it into comics.
Yeah.
Has anybody seen Gustave Doré's work? Phenomenal etching and like prints and stuff like that. He did like Dante's Inferno. I mean, like these.
Okay, I think I know stuff you're talking.
Phenomenally detailed. I mean, it make you cry. You can't believe somebody could do that much with black and white. Probably one of my hands down favorite artists. I evoke him in no particular manner at all. But yeah, Gustave Doré, awesome.
Is he the one that did like all of the Divine Comedy images?
Yes.
Okay, then I actually had some of those printed out when I was younger and taped up on my wall.
Yeah.
I literally thought that they were all drawn. Like
the steel plate etchings. I mean, he was carving that stuff out. I mean.
Yeah, I mean it's insane detail. It's insane detail to be etched out like that. I mean, the level of grade scaling and stuff in that.
Yeah.
I know one of my influences sci-fi is a guy named Wayne Barlow. Do you guys know who Wayne Barlow?
Oh, yep.
Wayne Barlow. Yeah. I like his Expedition, and then he did like 2 or 3 books on Hell, and the ideas and stuff behind him. Then of course the other inspiration is video games, world building and stuff always gets me. Video games, I'm always amazed that video games sometimes are able to get away with such weird ideas and try to bring them into comics, because there's really weird world building they do in games, and always try to like steal that, bring them into comics, especially a lot of the indie video games. You see really different art styles or different ways they attempt to
kind of relate, to comics too. It's world building, and it is kind of, having that style of character. Where it's that unusual character, you're not sure what they're going to do. That art really resonates with me quite a bit. As well as I've always been interested in the concept art behind the movies, when they have movie books and illustrators are brought in to discover the world and to look for it. I think that's what I was going for with illustration. Just in my mind, what inspires me the most is just that flat out imagination of like this brand new world and fleshing that out.
I remember
seen Moebius's version of that Willow. Like it's like almost like a Japanese samurai version of Willow, and it's so cool. It's so cool. I know, Tim, you were going to say something about games.
I was going to say one of my biggest inspirations that I've said on the Wednesday show and that I will bring up whenever someone asks about where I get ideas for stuff is Metal Gear Solid.
Yes.
If you want to talk about games with or stories with the giant buy-in, the world is controlled by 7 computers. One of them went insane. Nuclear disarmament is in fact a lie. Most nukes are in Alaska. Also, giant walking robots. Do with that what you will. But the way that they handle that, and again, it's the giant buy-in happens like in the first 10 minutes, but you don't fully grasp what's happened until that slow burn. He's kind of talking about, like, you remember the thing we told you in the first 10 minutes? This is what that really means. It's Kojima is his mind should be preserved and put into a museum after he passes.
It's funny because
yeah,
I've tried to talk to so many friends who like, well, yeah, I tried to play Metal Gear and it was okay. I mean, I was like, yeah, don't. It's like the gameplay is there. I'm like, you got to look at it as a total package. You really got to approach that with the story and the world and everything. If you're just approaching it on straight up good gameplay, it's there, but not like a straight up like action like Gears of War. That's not what he does. But yeah, you're the only. I meet very few people in the Metal Gear, and I like all my friends who are in the video games. Like, oh, I guess I should play it. I'm like, I'm not. I was like, I'm tired of trying to talk you guys into it. So you decide on your own.
I put it back on my bookshelf, but I have the IDW adaptation of Metal Gear Solids 1 and 2, as well as the interlude. It's the also the artist on that is so good. Yeah.
I still have my
GameCube. It's like superheroes in tactical clothes. It's like superheroes in tactical clothes. I mean, it's like, all this idea of making the superhero realistic by basically cladding them in skin tight leather. Like, no, put them in a flak jacket.
You give them flak jacket, like the full like high speed pads. Yeah.
Oh, so cool.
I think, and the role of cool, he has his giant bandana. That's it. Or the headband.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, yeah, I still have my GameCube. People like, do you play it? I'm like, just for Metal Gear Twin Snakes, and they remade the first one. That's the reason I keep that system. It's just because if they ever bring that game to another system, then but it's like that's the only way. And I still have the old PlayStation one, but I like the Twin Snakes and they remade it. But yeah, they are like superheroes. That's what I liked about them, and they're so unique and different superheroes. Like Fortune with the big lightning gun. I mean, he always has like just crazy stuff. And the games, a lot of the games are set up like you're fighting super villains because you go through and each boss has his own character and a super villain power and stuff.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
You guys know that they're remaking part 1. They're gonna. That's the word on the street right now.
Yeah.
Part 1's gonna be
I've heard that they're going to, but I've heard a lot of people say unless Hideo Kojima is involved, they don't want that.
I know it'll be interesting.
We will see how that goes.
Yeah. I mean, like Aaron, I keep my GameCube on tap for that. I have my Xbox now with the collection that has 2, Peace Walker, and 3. The PlayStation 4 for Metal Gear Solid 4, and then also Metal Gear Solid 5 on my Xbox again. So,
yeah,
nice. Well, anybody else have any other outside inspirations that influence their work? Mike, Joe, either one of you have anything?
I will actually say, I mean, heck, there's a lot of music stuff that actually inspires me too.
Yeah,
good point.
Like for example, Tool's very visual. On top of the fact of their music is, kind of, I don't know. I can kind of, sometimes I can just listen to music and I can kind of just like get images in my head from listening to it, I guess. And of course, but everybody remembers the old claymation Tool videos from back in the day.
Disturbing.
Yeah.
All those things.
Well, we're talking about the crazy stuff, or 9 Inch Nails old videos from back in the day with the pig head rotating around and stuff like that.
Manson's videos.
Yeah, Manson's videos. Even some of Metallica's videos. Very, very, very storytelling like. There's just stuff like that right there. Primus. My name is Mud. We're known as Big Brown Beaver.
Tim's got a grin. Tim, what's up?
I was saying Primus, and I knew immediately where he was going to go with that. Yeah, but I write to music all the time too, and it's if it's a good track, you can see what they're conveying to you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the one thing why I almost feel comics does have a little detriment is it doesn't have a music soundtrack. Because I'm always amazed in video games and movies. Like try watching scenes and put it on mute. It's not as effective. Like, you know, would Star Wars really
Foreign
be
movies.
as epic without the John Williams score?
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, I don't. I mean, comics can get there a little bit. I mean, you've seen artists who write music into the comics, but yeah, music is a huge component of storytelling. Sometimes it can be.
Yeah, like I've been playing around with some stuff lately, just kind of like, you know, getting a feel for it and putting some ideas down on paper. And all I've been listening to is like Helon or Verdana, you know, those bands, and it's just like it's like I got a gremlin in my head just beating these ideas out.
That's cool. What about you, Mike? Do you draw any inspiration for your comic book creations from outside of the immediate genre, or is it all kind of within that genre?
Probably animation. I think that's. I got fascinated with animation with the Batman animated series, because I think with animation there is a brevity to it. You know, the animators have to do a lot of shortcuts, because you know you have to draw a lot of poses, you have to draw a lot of frames, and I'm always fascinated with being able to convey so much with very little, and I have to say that is a big component when I kind of construct a panel, is the idea of how simply can I get across maybe a more convoluted idea, and I kind of look toward animation for that. I think animators have a really good reference as far as just being able to distill something down, kind of, you know, break it down to simple imagery, but still convey it very powerfully. You know, like I said, you know, a lot of the Tim stuff and a lot of the DC animated stuff, you know, came later on. It's interesting, and then, you know, even DuckTales, you know, the current DuckTales. I mean, with a lot of the imagery. I mean, like I said, we can convey so much with just little bits. You know, you don't have the typical lines of a lot of more drawny artists, let's call it that, guys that really depend on a lot of feathering, a lot of, you know, cross hatching, a lot of that stuff. And I, again, as I progressed, I kind of lost track of that stuff. I was much more interested in the more simpler ways of conveying things.
I think it dictates the pace, right? Like you can see that in the, you were talking about earlier, your Man in the Mask Halloween special in the first one. There's a scene in a graveyard, you know, and compositionally you can see all the negative shapes, everything like that. But because there's this consistency in kind of streamlined in how you've rendered things, your eye travels at a certain pace, right? And the same thing with something more detailed. I saw an artist recently, and it was great art, but my issue with the person's pencils, and it could have been the inker, I don't know, is you would have these small panels, of course, and then you would have the big panels. Well, the small panels that were like somebody doing something in a small area with like an establishing shot would be super rendered. And then you'd have like a quarter of the page in this big panel. Right. And it's not rendered. And it didn't make any sense because the pace didn't work, because now I'm focusing on this tiny panel. So my mind's kind of confused. Like, should I be focusing on this or not? Because it's small. So you're telling me it's not important, but it's super detailed. So I'm staring at it. And then the big panel where I should really have this gasp of air and really focus, there's no detail. So my eye just goes right off the page, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
and you're looking at my stuff again?
Yeah. No. Whoops. Not you. But you know, it's the artist has such a, you know, rendering has such a big thing in our medium in dictating pace. And I think it's even in color, overly rendering in color, things like that. It all depends. I think as long as it's a conscientious decision, either way it works, but not everybody understands that subtlety, you know. But in your book, there's a very consistent through line. I mean, it reads and you go page to page to page at a certain pace.
Well, that really works. A big part of the storytelling, isn't it? You know, you have to decide how soon the eye leaves what part of the page. You know,
exactly. It's like I was reading a book on marketing years back, and they were talking about having your own brand identity, and they said something very key, which is they said having your own brand identity says something. And if you don't have a brand identity, that also says something too, and that maybe not a good thing, you know? So if somebody doesn't know or isn't making these calculated decisions, it still has a result, right? You know, maybe an accidental result, good or bad, but it's a calculated art, you know, as much as it's intuitional. So that's really cool.
I definitely feel there. I go towards more simpler, and I've been trying to get more simpler art, because I mean, I think like, I used to put all the detail in, and I still love detailed artwork, but there were a few, the one artist that made me start to rethink this was Chris Botchlow. I don't know if I'm saying his name right.
Yeah.
Bacalo.
Oh, you
From
mean, yeah.
Generation X
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and
He,
Doctor Strange.
yeah, he's really good, but there's been a few comics that I still have no idea what's happening in some of the panels. I just don't know. His art was so much detail, and there's such weird that there were some panels where I'm like, I have no idea. I guess I'll just go on. And it was. Oh, go ahead.
I like Chris's stuff just because it's so graphic.
Yeah, it's so different.
Yeah. For me, I gravitate to that stuff. So even if I can't tell what's going on, I'm like, ooh, this is a really cool graphic image.
Yeah, I think he goes.
His silhouettes kind of break up that super detail, and he has very angular, like we talked about, our straights and curves, so that it kind of contains the busyness on a good day, right? That's kind of what I think his strength. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed, especially he does it a lot more now than he used to do it. He'll actually have it to where, like, you'll have 2 or 3 panels like in dead center in the middle of the page, and then the top panel finishes on the bottom of the page.
I think I've seen him
and it's
do
so
that.
hard for your eye to follow.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's trying to follow through with the panels, but like the panels will be like something else going on, and then you have beginning of an action and the end of the action, the top and bottom of the page. He did that in Doctor Strange like multiple times.
There was one comic that I think he was a steampunk. I think he did that was Image, way back, like early 2000s. That was really cool. But that was the one comic where I couldn't figure out what was going on. Most of his superhero stuff was usually okay, but that steampunk one, I was like, I don't know what's going on in half of these panels. I just can't make out heads or tails what's going on. It looked cool. That's why I kept buying it.
The biggest problem I think with steampunk is that, and I thought it was an awesome idea that someone tried doing it, is that there are so many different fonts going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody had their own font, and then everybody had their own little quirks inside the font, and all the bubbles were different, and it was cool looking, but very, very distracting from the actual art itself.
Yeah.
No, totally. Well, I think the one thing we haven't, we're starting to wind down here, but we're talking about things that inspire us, and it kind of dovetails into something else we talked about, like film, TV. Everybody has got to draw some inspiration from something in that medium, I would think. Does anybody have any
Chinese
thoughts on that? Oh yes, Hong Kong, right?
Hong Kong. Well, not even just Hong Kong, like mainland China. The cinema coming out of there, amazing. And for comic book stuff, watching it's like watching a really bad B movie, but the stuff coming out of India, like the fighting movies coming out of India, they're great for drawing inspiration for comics. So they're awesome for that stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But when it comes to like mood lighting and stuff like that, for me personally, you can't beat Kubrick.
Yeah.
Kubrick. Like for when it comes to he always has that one point perspective shot in a lot of his stuff. Like like in The Shining, you just down to the twins.
Yeah.
And his lighting is just amazing.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like for lighting, my favorite is this British gentleman, Christopher Doyle, and he collaborated a lot with Wong Kar-wai, the Hong Kong director. But his colors and the gels and the things he uses. It's this movie called Fallen Angels. It's almost like looking at a comic book. It's amazing. Really, really cool stuff. Yeah. Anybody else? Any film, TV shows that kind of influence your work or get you pumped?
Strange enough, Tron, the original Tron, to this day is still a huge inspiration, just because and it's one of those films that still looks good because it's so unique on itself. It doesn't look aged, because it's like, no, that's just how the world looks. It's not trying to be real. It's trying to be, and that's of course when I started figuring out about Sid Meier and Mobius, because they all worked on that, and that so many design. But I remember, because it was funny, because like, Star Wars never, it was fun but never inspired me, but seeing entire worlds like Tron was like, I was like, what
That
is
was
this
great.
thing? Like, what is this? I mean, it's just so weird looking. And yeah, so it's still one of my big. And then of course, I like fantasy stuff. So another inspiration was the Neverending Story,
Of
the
course.
original one, that sort of storybook fantasy and the way they did stuff in there. Yeah, there's a lot of just art direction, the way they did things that were really inspirational.
Well, when I was really young, there was a movie. There was a movie out for a book I read when I was a child, one of my first novels. I don't know why I was reading a novel at that age, but I did. It was Watership Down.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
Oh, Watership
artwork
Down.
and the
Yeah.
cinematography of that animation was so dramatic and so beautiful, yet so it was very vicious story. You know, it was kind of a realistic portrayal of these rabbits, but they were all very, you know, human in their personalities.
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely. Like Don Bluth was another.
visually a really big influence on me. I think just for the way they did landscapes and the way they treated the animals, and it just was a neat way of telling a story.
The BBC remade that. Sorry, the BBC remade that this last Christmas.
Yeah, I saw that.
CG one, right?
Yeah,
It's
it
not the
loses
same
something.
feeling though, right?
Yeah, it did lose something. That
So
original.
guys, sorry to chime in real quick, because we were talking about him, his ears must have been burning. Tommy Florimonte, the man himself, the legend, wrote in, and he just wanted to know, he said, "What's up, everybody? Sorry I'm late. Can we start over from the beginning?" I'm Curtis Fujita with Silverline.
Yeah, I know. So we're going to start right over. Yes.
Sorry,
I'm going to
Tommy.
remember that, Tommy. I'm going to remember that.
Another inspiration for me in movies is probably Don Bluth, especially like The Secret of Nim.
Yes.
Just the design and stuff. His stuff was like that sort of animated detail. He would put detail in his, especially when he did water. The way he did bubbles and water was like crazy. And so yeah, he was a huge influence. I remember seeing The Secret of Nim, and it had this really weird, cool edge to it, and it kind of ruined me for Disney for a lot, because I'd watch Disney, it seemed so tame. Then you watch Secret of Nim, where they're like sword fighting and doing all this, like the scene with the great owl when it would like turn his head. I mean, I was just like, I was hooked, and I was like, yeah, Disney can, yeah, okay, whatever. I want more Don Bluth. I want more of that stuff. That's what I wanted. I was really into it.
Another big one for me was the Dark Crystal they had.
Yeah.
When that came on, I was like, oh my God, that's so different.
Yeah.
Travis Oliver just wrote to us. He said, "What's going on, good people? Hey, how's it going, Travis? Hope you're doing well." And you're talking about Don Bluth. I think he's one of the animators that I felt like he always gets a sense of volume and weight. Like even the water seemed to have volume and weight to it, you know. And that there's a tutorial that he posted online of how to draw hair, and he was just critiquing somebody. You can find it on YouTube, and it's just utterly fascinating. Just these little details about how to create volume and shape. And he's starting his animation studio again, we were talking about last time. So
yeah. And I'm just like, you're getting up there, dude. So stay alive to make something cool. I mean, he's got to be in his 70s by now. I mean, it sounds like this. Stay alive there, Chief. Yeah. There's the other animated show was Fire and Ice. That really got me.
Bakshi.
Ralph Bakshi.
Yeah.
When Frank was that a character?
Yeah.
That was a fun one. Definitely. Any other TV shows or anything else then?
Well, I mean, we were talking anime, but I mean,
yeah.
But I mean, Voltron. The original Voltron was really well directed.
Yeah.
Akira.
Oh yeah.
Akira was just amazing.
I think we've advertised Akira a lot on Sunday.
There's no way not to advertise Akira. There's nothing about that anime that was, underdone. I mean, it was just I mean, from the original manga to the anime,
the details in the manga, the architecture would just like make you cry. It's just like, did he get an architecture team to draw this?
I think maybe it was somebody on here. Somebody talked about he had like 1 or 2 assistants that would help him draw the buildings or whatever. And I'm not sure that guy's blind and crippled after drawing all those buildings done out. I mean, I'm just like, he's like every sort of window's got to have like not only window, but each window has to have sort of the sealant around the edge that they seal the window. I mean, it was just like unreal.
And there were cracks. There were cracks in every bit of concrete and a little pebble underneath. I mean, it's just. Oh, that's just devastating. Devastating.
I'll actually bring one up. I'll bring one up. I never thought you could do a samurai anime and make it feel kind of like a Western in a way, a little bit. And they managed to pull that off in Afro Samurai.
Oh yeah,
that's one of I really liked that series. That was
the
awesome.
music was great too, by of course.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Wu-Tang.
Yeah, that's excellent. Excellent, good stuff. Good stuff. So, we're starting to wind down. What would be for comic books? Now here, it's kind of a lofty one, so we'll see if we can finish it with something lofty. How would you want to inspire somebody with your work? This is the $1 million question. Like, you want to inspire them to create stuff? Do you want them to inspire to be a better person? Do you want to inspire them? What if you could have your dream of what your work?
I would like to make a few $1 million, and people look at comics and say, "I can get rich drawing comic books." That's how I'd like to inspire people.
I agree. I could not disagree more.
No, I don't. Something like Aaron was saying earlier. It's just to see your book in a comic books or a bookshop. I think that's really something cool. Something to I'm looking forward to the day where that happens.
See your name in print.
Yeah. I've done anthologies and stuff, but to actually go into a bookshop or a comic store and your comic be in there, I think that would be amazing.
Then they ask you, why are you taking all the other books off? Just leaving that one. On its own bookshelf.
I'm rearranging my shelves.
Yeah. Don't bother me.
But it's funny
your stuff over by Marvel.
Yeah.
It's funny how life is, because going back to nowadays, we was cool because we all got our names inside, and I was like editorial assistant, and so I would go to the comic book shop as a kid in high school to pick up the comic books, and I didn't think I looked shady. The comic book shop always thought I was going to steal something, and I would be looking at the book with my name in it, and they make me empty my pockets every freaking time, and I wanted to be like, like the angry celebrity. Do you know who I am? I'm the editorial assistant. Damn it, So it's
funny.
Not always what it's cracked up to be, but very good aspiration.
I would just
for me it would be just draw that one book that somebody rolls up and just can never get enough of.
Yeah.
To me, that would just be the ultimate to see, someone that loves something that I drew, that it was always rolled up and get ready to fall apart, and you just ain't gonna get rid of it. That's just his favorite book.
Like that's what you see at an autographing session, this weathered, torn up copy with tape on it, and they want you to sign that. Yeah, that's the dream, right? Yeah.
That's the real dream. Rather than like fame and money and stuff, the person had just that one book.
Yeah. I want to have a.
But you wouldn't say no to the money.
No.
No.
I'd want to have a book or something, or anything that's in the school library or in, like the school book fair or whatever, and it makes a kid skip class. Like just something that makes a kid want to like hide out in a corner of the library and just skip class. Like just give them that experience.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm in a life of crime because of Tim TK's novel in high school.
I skipped class once, and I'm just on these weird obscure drugs from the 70s, and I have weird squid gods in my head.
The first time I ever stole was a Tim TK book.
Yeah.
The last thing he said in A Hail of Bullets was Wolf Hunter. He's still trying to discern.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think for me it would be that stop thinking of dreams as dreams, and that they're actual goals that you have to put like some sort of effort into, but they're very reachable.
Definitely. I think that's the thing everybody here kind of shares, right? I mean, everybody here, it's quite as sounds, is a dreamer in a sense, but also the people, you have to have a certain tenacity to hold on to your dreams, right? Especially when you're an adult. I mean, it's so much easier for everybody here to just say, okay, I'll just do my 9 to 5 and pay my bills and do this and that. That's it's not fun, but that's what's common, But if you really value what you're going for, you stick to it. It's not easy for anybody, and I think everybody was kind of saying more or less that they had moments where somebody got a bad critique or maybe didn't get support, But what's more uncommon is just sticking to it, and that's what's so cool when you see that comic book, right? Only you know what it took to get there. Only you know those nights staying up late, and all the difficulty and stuff like that. And that's totally rewarding. And nobody will ever know how much work anybody put into any of these creations except you, So fans, be nice to every creator because they worked really hard, no matter what you think of the book. Please be nice.
You're rewarding me with exposure.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. The joke here is that once you join the editorial staff, your compensation is one Del Taco burrito a year.
Yeah.
Really? That's an improvement. I can't wait.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I know. Still waiting for that apartment that, you can pay exposure. We take 60 exposure for rent. I'm in.
Definitely. Well, does anybody have any recommendations? Like if you were to say, okay, this book, like tonight, you should read this comic book. As soon as people are done watching the show, why doesn't everybody kind of give one recommendation of one book, graphic novel, something like that? Must see.
Good call.
This one right here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I have
Essential
two recommendations. Yeah, I have two recommendations. It would be the first one would be God Love Man Hates.
Oh yeah. Great one.
And the Immortal Hulk series with because it was awesomely written. It was the artwork's insane from the pencils to the colors, heck, even the Venom stuff and Kate's and anything Kate and Stegman are doing is something I'd pick up too.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta grab one if you can find it even online.
Dale Keown.
The old Pit, Dale Keown.
Nice.
Keown's art will grab you.
Definitely. Pete, you were gonna say.
Like I mentioned earlier, anything by Daniel Warren Johnson. Just check out his art. Wonder Woman: Dead Earth was the last thing he's done. That finished last month, I think.
Was that under the Black Label?
Yeah.
Okay, I did see that one. Yeah, I have the first two volumes. I don't think I picked up the third one.
Just his art, and he did Extremity. If you pick up Extremity from Image, that was cool. He did something else as well. I can't remember what it is. Can't remember. But yeah, anything by him. Yeah.
Mike, how about you? Any recommendations? Any picks for the folks, Mike?
Well, my always go-to is anything by Matt Wagner. Mage is one of those desert island reads, and then probably the other one is New Frontier by Darwin Cook. I was right there. I don't think I could do without those. If I had to get rid of everything I had, those are definitely the ones I'd have to have. New Frontier, page to page, it's just downright beauty. I mean, it is. You could absolutely say he did that as a labor of love. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of work.
Aaron?
I have a few that are my all-time classics. Chihiro's Appleseed. It's not finished, but it's definitely worth it. Jeff Smith's Bone. I'm a big Bone.
Oh, Bone, yeah, I love Bone.
And then of course, if you can go round up any of the Alien Legion comics from old, those are always worth it. Especially Larry Stroman's art in all of those are amazing.
Yes. I forgot about those. Yes.
Yeah.
Roberta, how about you? What are your picks?
Oh, my all-time favorite earlier novel that really influenced me, I think, was the Frank Miller's Elektra Assassin.
Oh yeah.
It was just so dramatic. It was the painterly style of it, just really neat, and the story was amazing. I liked it.
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend that one.
Kevich, I think, did the drawings, right? For that one, the illustrations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So stylized. So cool.
So I don't know. Then just it grabs you.
Yeah.
So as
Yeah,
an
that book, almost every panel looks like it could be an album cover or
it
something.
is
In the best way possible, right?
it is kind of like the lighting in particular, really interesting. And then the color choices, very interesting. And it just, so much variety of mood. That's the kind of thing that really hit me.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still going back over the Sandman. Early on, I love that. Just the style of that is very different. At the time, like obviously that story went on and on and on, but but it was I still think it has a quality to it that really influences people.
I think that's the trademark of a good book, a good story, right? Is you can go back to it. I always feel it's like you go back to it and you find something new in it. The book hasn't changed. You've changed your perspective on life as you get older and stuff like that. It's just like traveling. You can travel anywhere in the world and then you go back to your small hometown and nothing's changed, but everything looks different, right? And
right.
I'd say that's like the peak of art, is when you can have something somebody can keep harkening back to and drawing from and putting things into it, So that's a good one. What about you, Tim? What about your thoughts on
so
recommendations?
Yeah. Brand new book just came out September 30th, so you can get it from your Comixology or your friendly neighborhood comic shop. The Department of Truth by James Tynion IV and Martin Simmons. It is a book based on every single conspiracy theory there is prevalent right now. A guy finds out that it's true and is drafted through the government organization that's maintained with keeping them just believable enough. It's a mind trip. It's great.
Fun.
And the art is beautiful.
Fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's it called again?
The Department of Truth.
The Department of Truth. I like that.
That's a fun name.
Well, my recommendation, and it sounds like lip service, but it's totally the case. For those of you watching, you spent a couple hours with us tonight. We were all talking. You got inside all these different creators' heads about things you heard about, all their influences, but they're creators. And so some of the books are forthcoming. Some of them are out there. I highly encourage you to check out the actual theory and the practice and the philosophy of everything we talked about tonight got put into everybody's work that we have out here through Silverline and elsewhere. So, make sure you check it out. It's a unique opportunity to be able to sit. We were talking about John getting to meet Mark Silvestri and stuff like that. It's not normal, but nowadays we have the show, we get insight into everybody, and then you can see how we actualize that in our work. So please check out our Silverline books. Like I said, we do it because of you folks. We appreciate the support of everybody. We got a lot of cool stuff coming down.
Hey, Curtis, I almost feel like we're doing a disservice to other people that everybody should go look at. Is Bernie Wrightson and Tim Vigil.
Please, definitely.
Absolutely, 100% have to.
Absolutely.
Stop what you're doing right now after the stream and go do it.
Well, but let me just say, Tim Vigil. That's it's an acquired taste for a certain age group. So let's just put a disclaimer on that, okay? Because I saw Tim Vigil's work when I was 14, and we'll just say it had an effect on me. yeah. Tim Vigil's amazing, but I have to put the caveat.
The amount of detail that goes into his work though is insane.
Just kind of funny thing. Tim Vigil did a drawing. They did a cover for Wolverine and Nightman for Malibu. It's kind of a story most people don't know, and they gave it to Tim Vigil, and he turned in. I remember seeing in the office an image of Wolverine with like his claws bloody, and the character of Nightman beheaded, and the head was lobbed and rolling on the ground in a puddle of blood. And from what I remember correctly, my friends who were the assistant editors, it got sent to New York for approval from Marvel, and a fax came back from Mark Grunwald, and all it said was no. It was just N-O and an exclamation point. So, and that's just so you folks know, Tim Vigil, amazing artist, but that's a tame version of him. That's what he was doing for Marvel. So, enter at your own risk, okay? But great artist. I agree completely. So
cool.
Until next time, 1, 2, 3.
Make mine Silverline.
All right, everybody. Have a good evening. Thanks for joining us. Take care.
See ya.
Yeah.